How's it going, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be going over 10 really common money mindset traps that severely limit happiness. As I mentioned in this video, we're going to be talking about different sorts of ideas that people have and relating to money that significantly reduce happiness. Some of these you might be able to argue or want to argue. These are sort of philosophical positions. However, for the most part, they're not. They're just sort of ideas that people get stuck in their head that slow them down or prevent them from living in a way that's fully fulfilled in regards to money, right? I know I personally have had to do quite a bit of work in this realm to find something healthier and better than sort of the defaults that I had as I was growing up. So, as you listen in, you don't have to take this at face value, but do pay attention because there are arguments against a lot of these ideas that sort of show why they potentially reduce happiness and that there is a more useful alternative. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is scarcity, right? And one of the most common money mindset traps is basically that money is a finite resource. And of course, at any given moment, there's only a certain amount of money circulating in the economy, but that's different than what people are generally saying, which is that they are only able to earn a certain amount and they will never be able to earn any more, or there's no way to sort of find, get, or produce more money. And this sort of scarcity idea really locks you into some other mindsets around not wanting to spend any money, right? Because if you think that there are only limited ways to make money, then you're going to also believe that you shouldn't be spending it because you need to hang on to what little you have. Some of the things to do or think about to combat sort of this mindset. One idea, one piece is sort of looking at all the different ways that you actually could make more money, right? So regardless of what you're doing now, you have the option to sort of work more hours, find another job that pays more, find a second job, start some sort of side hustle, find some way to like buy and resell stuff, right? Which is one of these other businesses umbrellas, right? The trick is that a lot of people don't necessarily know how to produce more money, but that's different than saying that it can't be done, right? When you're in scarcity, you feel like it's not possible to produce more, as opposed to the more useful mindset of you don't know how. Because if you look at it in the sense of you don't know how, you can always go and learn the things that you need to know to be able to produce more money. All right, number two, really common mindset around money that I see is to basically use it while you have it, right? As soon as I make money, I spend it because I have money, I should go out and spend it. Now, at the surface level, there doesn't really seem to be anything wrong with that. But the problem is when you're doing that in a way that, one, either doesn't set you up for the future, or two, makes it so that you struggle, right? We all have unexpected life circumstances show up, and when you're spending money as soon as you get it, you don't create any buffer for yourself in case those sorts of events come up. And while there are options around, sort of getting loans in the short term and stuff like that, in general, those things tend to be really, really expensive because of the high interest rates and whatnot. So while it makes sense that, you may never know when you're going to die or whatever else, and you want to spend the money because you've earned it, doing so can put you in a position that makes other pieces of your life really difficult, right? Whenever anything unexpected comes up, you're going to have to really stretch to cover it. And especially if a big financial burden shows up, then you're going to really struggle with that because you're going to suddenly need much more money than you're used to getting. So it is definitely useful to think about sort of saving and investing and these other ways of being able to relate with money, because if you simply spend it as soon as you get it, you leave yourself vulnerable. Third money mindset trap that I see is the idea that money will make my life better. Now, this idea isn't completely useless and bad, right? Money can improve your life, but it really, really depends on how you're spending the money and what you're spending it on, as well as what you have to do to make it, right? So if you think you need more money to go on more vacations, but those vacations aren't really improving your quality of life and it means every week you have to work an extra 20 hours or something, then that trade-off isn't actually very useful. And the other part of making more money and not necessarily being happier is that at a certain point, when you have sort of your basic needs met, right? Once you know you're going to be able to pay rent, you know where your next meal is coming from, things like that, and some of the stressors go away, what you're left with is kind of this wide field of opportunity. And it doesn't mean that making more money is going to make your life better, right? The jump from, I don't know, 500,000 to 600,000 is probably not going to be meaningful for a large number of people, because more likely than not, that extra 100,000 is not going to give you any great or better ideas on how to spend the money to actually improve your life. So if you want money to make your life better, you need to be very mindful about the ways that you're spending money and how they're producing happiness. Because more often than not, the default of just, okay, I upgraded from the 400K a year car to the 500K a year car isn't going to produce anything tangible whatsoever. You have to be much more mindful, and having more money can open up more options, but simply having more money is not going to make your life better. Number 4, this money mindset trap is saying that you will figure out money when you make more, or just straight up ignoring money altogether, right? There are a number of people who think that by not paying attention to money, some of the problems that are associated with it will go away, or that whenever they make more money, they'll sort of pay a little bit better attention to it and figure it out. The problem here is that you don't tend to make more money by just simply following the same path that you've always been following, right? You need to pay attention to sort of the path you're on and learn how to interact with and use money wisely if you want to increase the amount of money you're making. Now, of course, you can, follow this sort of blind, path, and you may get little raises here and there. You may find opportunities here and there. But for the most part, that's not going to make a big difference in your income. You're not going to see these huge jumps between different levels of income. So by ignoring money or not really paying attention until you think you have enough to pay attention to, you're sort of selling yourself short. And in the same way as this sort of use it while you have it mentality we talked about earlier, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to these problems that can arise unexpectedly because you're not paying enough attention to where the money is going or what you're doing with it. All right, money mindset trap number 5 is thinking that money is evil or that rich people are evil, right? So money at the core is just a tool. It is just a representation of value that can be traded around, right? So when you believe money is evil inherently, then that sort of thinking takes you away from the types of behaviors or activities that allow you to gain money. And in the same way, thinking that anyone who earned money has done it, in some sort of evil way, really locks you out of seeing sort of how the system works and how money flows and moves around. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have done evil things to make a lot of money. But there are also a lot of people who have produced wealth by creating a lot of value, right? That's generally how the money equation works. Now, don't get me wrong. There are disconnects, and this is probably the most philosophical piece that people can push back on more. But in general, by producing value, you get money, right? So typically to make a lot of money, you need to produce a lot of value for a lot of people. Let me sort of give you an example. So if I were to be a therapist, for example, the amount of impact that I could have is sort of limited by my time. The number of people that I'm able to see and my level of expertise sort of dictates how much I'm able to earn. But if I were to take that same expertise and knowledge and turn it into something like an app or a website or a program, then it scales a little bit better because it helps way more people. And those opportunities or those sort of creations have the ability to make much, much more money just because they scale better, right? This has nothing to do in this particular example with whether or not the product itself is good or bad, right? And then that's another question where, I fall squarely on the side of you can definitely make money doing things that are sort of sketchy and shady, but I think in the long term, and end up coming to bite you in the butt. But that being said, the point here is that earning money in itself is not evil, right? And being rich or having money is not necessarily evil. Money is a tool to allow you to do things. You can use or gain money in a way that's sort of sketchy and whatnot, but I would say probably most money is earned in some sort of way that does provide value, right? Only a limited amount of transactions are based around sort of this shadiness. Now, what people choose to do with their money and the way that they spend it, there can be all sorts of arguments around what you should be doing if you're earning a certain amount, or what's fair for individuals to have and own. And those are a little bit different conversations that I'm not going to start talking about or cover here. But overall, the idea that money is evil is very limiting for most people and can really reduce your overall happiness. All right, the sixth money mindset trap is living in the future, or just waiting and waiting and waiting, right? There are a number of people who are sort of in the opposite camp of the use it while you have it people, who essentially hoard money, right? It goes back to this scarcity idea, but instead of thinking you can't earn more, this sort of living in the future is this idea of like, okay, I'm going to save every cent that I possibly can so that I can have a good life in the future, or that when I'm 65, I'll have everything I need to retire, and then I can finally do the things that I want. The reason this so severely reduces happiness is because often it comes at the cost of the day-to-day interactions. If you have a job that you like and you're able to provide for yourself in a way that makes you feel comfortable, and you're thinking, when I retire, then I'll go do this sort of world tour or whatever it is that I'm interested in, a positioning like that can work. But a lot of people are sort of doing this grind day in, day out, working really hard at things they don't enjoy, having a lifestyle or quality of life that's lower than it needs to be to try to have this sort of ideal future. And the problem here is essentially that while it's reasonable if you would like to sacrifice some of your present happiness for the future, right? Sort of this like saving and investing and stuff like that. If done at too much of an extreme, and if done in a way that you are only waiting to live for the future and spend money in the future, then it can really reduce your current quality of life. All right, moving on to the seventh money mindset trap, which is waiting for the world to make you rich. There is a number of people that sort of think, as they get older, or as they stay in their sort of profession or try to build skills or whatever else, that they will just start making more and more money and continue to increase. The problem with that sort of idea is it goes back to what we were talking about before, where making money has a lot to do with value, right? So depending on the line of work you're in and what you're doing, the amount of value that the system is willing to pay you for is a very important factor in how much money you're going to make, right? It's just really hard to hear people say, oh, well, I'm going to get rich someday, and then look at the sorts of actions they're taking and seeing that those things don't line up. While that can work for people for a while, at some point, you're going to realize that that gap is not closing. So if you are genuinely interested in making a lot of money, you need to spend a lot of time looking at sort of the different avenues and activities and skill sets and scaling and things that you need to make a lot of money. Now, a lot of people don't want to do that, right? That's not something that's interesting to a lot of people or makes them happy. A lot of people don't want to invest that much time in figuring out how to make more money, which is completely fine. It's just pushing back against sort of this mismatch idea that if I don't spend any attention or anything paying mind to how money is created and how to make more of it, that it's suddenly going to flow to me, right? In general, you have to spend more time figuring these things out if you want to make more money. By simply just sitting and waiting for things to fall into your lap, it is very, very unlikely that those things are going to happen, right? It could, it may every once in a while, but more often than not, you're going to need to actually put in the work and build out the path and sort of tweak the knobs yourself. All right, money mindset trap number 8 is lifestyle inflation. This is basically the idea that as you earn more money, you spend more money. This is not necessarily terrible in principle, right? The idea that if you earn more, you want to spend a little bit more is okay. But many times it comes paired with this sort of use it while you have it mentality. And paired together, you can end up making quite a bit more money over the years, but not necessarily having any more stability or security. Now, for some people, that may not be something that they want, right? But in general, inflating your lifestyle one to one with the amount of money you make is going to leave you vulnerable again in case there are any hiccups down the road, like we've been talking about. So there's a balance to be drawn between sort of saving and investing and actually spending money. But sometimes the best thing that you can do is, if you make more money, taking a little bit more time instead of, upgrading your car or upgrading your house right away, really paying attention to the way that you can spend the money to improve your life, right? It goes back to the trap of more money will make my life better. That's only true if you use it for things that actually make you happier. So, if upgrading from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom house actually produces something that changes your life in the day-to-day, great. But for a lot of people, it's not going to. You're just going to have a bigger house to have a bigger house. So this sort of blind lifestyle inflation is not necessarily a good way to spend your money, and it can keep you trapped when you want more freedom, but you've already spent all the money sort of doing these upgrades. All right, the 9th money mindset trap is that time is money. And the reason that this idea is so problematic is because time is much, much more valuable than money. You can always earn more money, right? Going back to scarcity, you can always earn more money, but you cannot get more time back, right? Whatever amount of time we have to exist is finite, and it's not a renewable resource. So by thinking about time as money, or basically the associated problem with this idea is that your time is worth a certain dollar amount, so it's okay to spend a bunch of it, right? So you can look at this and say stuff like, oh, well, the more time I spend sort of working, the more money I'll make. And this can leave you trapped because the ways to make a lot of money are to sort of detach time and money, right? When you can figure out ways to make money without investing your time, you're able to make much, much more. And the other problem is sort of this idea that experiences can have a finite monetary value, right? Because your time is worth so much more. Now, of course, there are things that you can do, like sort of think about like, okay, would I spend an hour in line waiting for a free, $6 hamburger? Well, if you value your time at $6 an hour, then that might make sense. You can use this idea to sort of do some useful things or helpful things around making decisions, but it can also become a trap when you start looking at it in terms of my time is what I have to spend to make money. That is what the majority of people do, but it's not the way to actually produce a lot of money. And the reason that can be a mindset trap is thinking that you have to spend your time to make money, right? You might have to do that at some points, but you can also use money to make money, or time to make an asset that produces money. I'm not going to go super, super deep into all these ideas, but in essence, there are other ways to make money besides just spending your time, and generally those are even better or able to produce more happiness for an individual. The last money mindset myth that I'm going to cover is that you can save your way to getting rich, right? A lot of people think that if they can just keep cutting back and save even more and save even more and save even more, that they're going to make themselves rich. And not spending wildly can help to a degree in terms of being able to invest in assets, build wealth, and sort of get the snowball rolling. But you're never going to get rich by only saving, right? And so one way to sort of think about it is if you're making, $20,000 a year and you're able to save all of it, you save all $20,000 a year, and you have this really miserable lifestyle. That's one way, and at the end of each year, you'll have $20,000. But if you can figure out a way to make $40,000, then you can spend $20,000 and still save that $20,000. And if you can make 50, you can figure out how to make 50, then you go up to 30,000 left over, right? And it keeps scaling up like that. So the more useful metric to get rich or to build wealth is earning, not saving, right? You can save as much as you want, but if you're not earning much, then you're not going to be able to keep much of it. So the reason that this can really reduce happiness is because a lot of people don't think about earning more money. They just think about saving. And it can get to the point for a lot of people that they've cut back so much that they start cutting into their quality of life. Now, for some people, they are spending on things that aren't making them happy, right? They're buying a coffee every day when they're just as happy making it at home, or it takes the same amount of time. And those sorts of things make sense. But when it's, you genuinely enjoy going out to eat and you stop doing it completely, right? That's when it starts hindering sort of your happiness. And, you combine this with other stuff like you don't want to necessarily do lifestyle inflation. But the key factor for building wealth is going to be your income, not necessarily how much you're saving, because again, like we were talking about with the math, as you scale up your income, you get more money to potentially save. But as you save more and more, at a certain point, if you're saving 100%, which isn't realistic, that's all you can save. So again, if trying to make a lot of money or getting wealthy, or if there's a certain net worth or whatever else that you want to hit, really look at ways that you can increase what you're earning. Because, you might be able to do some by saving, but you will get far more progress by really thinking about earning. All right, so that was just a couple ideas around, really common money mindset traps I see. They sort of impact people in different ways. Some of these ideas have some pros and cons, but overall, they're just ideas that I've seen really hold people back and stop them from fully flourishing. Let's move on to some reflection questions. 1. What is your relationship with money? 2. Which money mindset trap do you need to work on most? So again, I just wanted to bring these up because I've had struggles with most of them, if not all of them, and trying to sort of figure out what is a healthy and useful way to spend money and have a good relationship with money and saving and investing and all those things. And it's definitely something I'm still working on. But I hope that helps you sort of see some different perspectives for ideas that you might hold. That's all I've got for this video. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, topics I'm going to cover, throw them down in the box below. Get to them as soon as I can, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.